Welcome back, fellow urban renewers. Thanks for tuning in to our second episode of Urban Renew. This is Vian here, and I'm currently based in Hong Kong. How is everyone doing so far? For those of you who haven't watched our first episode on green gentrification, scan this QR code here to watch. From that episode, we addressed the importance of tackling green gentrification by planning out development activities in a more holistic manner, taking into account anti-displacement and inclusive greening policies. Today, we will be discussing the background behind Hong Kong's urban development. Currently, Hong Kong is known for being a renowned global hub with vibrant urban landscapes. But how did it become the city we know today? Let's dive deeper into Hong Kong's history of urban development. Hong Kong has 262 outlying islands, with its main island being renowned for its Kowloon Peninsula. This made it the perfect geographical port in the early 1800s for British merchants to unload and trade opium. After winning the Opium War in 1842, the Treaty of Nanking was established, giving Hong Kong to Britain, enabling free British trade and the spread of westernization. Both these factors contributed as an accelerator to Hong Kong's urban development. Firstly, its characteristics of free British trade enabled it to quickly become a regional center for financial and commercial services. This quickly attracted a stream of people looking for lucrative businesses and careers. In 1841, there were only around 7,500 Chinese inhabitants in Hong Kong and a few foreigners. But by 1859, there were over 85,000 Chinese inhabitants and around 1,600 foreigners. The economy was tied mostly to commercial services such as shipping, banking, and merchant services. Hong Kong's famous low tax policy also served as an additional incentive and stimulus to the growth of the city. Fast forward a few decades later, Hong Kong also underwent a rapid industrialization period in the 1950s that served to further accelerate the city's growth. After the Civil War, Hong Kong benefited from the large influx of immigrants in 1945. In particular, Shanghainese immigrants kick-started the cotton spinning industry in Hong Kong, which ultimately led to the rise of the textile industry, before diversifying into clothing, electronics, plastics, and more. Government policies aided the rapid economic growth and inflow of immigrants into Hong Kong, particularly programs related to public housing, land reclamation, and infrastructure investment. Before we dive deeper into public housing, though, let's talk about infrastructure investment. The government pursued an ambitious public education program back in the 1950s, creating over 300,000 new schools between 1954 and 1961. Secondary education was expanded in the 1970s, and education was made compulsory and free shortly after 1978. These investments in education reaped its benefit in the coming decades, with the establishment of world-class universities such as Hong Kong University, attracting talent and innovation. A highly skilled workforce also served to accompany the transition from the secondary to tertiary sector industries. Let's also not forget Hong Kong's unique economic policies. Hong Kong's famous low tax policy and limited exchange controls, complemented by Hong Kong's geographical location that brought the East and West together, made it the perfect haven for international trade, and therefore economic development. Now, let's talk about housing in Hong Kong. There are some upsides to Hong Kong housing. Back in the 1950s, it was precisely the government's ambitious programs in public housing and investments in industrial towns that were the solution to accommodating immigrants and aiding industrial growth. Subsidies in public housing indirectly aided the industries by restricting the rise in the cost of living. Industrial areas that emerged in the 1950s to 60s included Cheung Sha Wan, Tai Kok Tsui, San Po Kong, Shao Kei Wan, Wong Chuk Hang, and Chai Wan. Low land prices made it possible for these industries to emerge and grow. Then how did gentrification emerge? As evident in what I previously said, Hong Kong experienced a rapid and dramatic growth in population and urbanization, particularly during the 1950s to 60s. People had to live in informal settlements and squatter areas. At one point in time, the squatter population constituted 25% of the entire Hong Kong population. One particularly infamous example was the Shek Kep Mei squatter area, which left 53,000 people homeless in 1953 after a fire emerged. So, the government created urban redevelopment projects, as mentioned previously. In Hong Kong's case, the squatted areas people previously resided in were unsafe and had inadequate living conditions, so redevelopment helped improve living conditions. While this did provide new housing for the urban poor, it also led to the displacement of existing communities from their traditional neighborhoods. This would have inevitably been disruptive to the daily lives of the residents and may not have been fully adequate to address their needs. For example, being uprooted from the previous communities may have disrupted their livelihoods and previous economic activities. Hong Kong's continuity of rapid economic growth, as mentioned previously, being linked to its policies, education, and prime location, accommodated the transition from a manufacturing-based economy into a finance-driven economy in 1970 to 80, leading to the emergence of a new middle-class and affluent population, which sought to live in wealthier, newer neighborhoods. One example of this kind of change in neighborhood atmosphere would be Sheung Wan. Traditionally a hub for dried seafood and herbal medicine trade, Sheung Wan attracted the attention of middle and upper classes due to its proximity to the central business district and also its historical character. Redevelopment projects and the influx of upscale shops, cafes, and galleries led to the displacement of many long-term residents and small businesses. Perhaps in response to this new demand, the government also established the Land Development Corporation, now known as the Urban Renewal Authority, to undertake comprehensive urban renewal projects. These projects often continue to target older, working-class neighborhoods, leading to the displacement of original residents and the transformation of these areas into more affluent, gentrified communities. Gentrification is nuanced and more often than not a side effect of economic growth, especially rapid economic growth. After hearing the background behind Hong Kong's general gentrification and urban development, what ideas or questions do you have? To address green gentrification in this episode, I'd encourage you to dig deeper on Hong Kong's history behind gentrification. Getting a strong understanding of Hong Kong's history is crucial to evaluate the very policies and structures that enable gentrification to or to not take place. Getting a strong understanding of Hong Kong history is crucial to evaluate the very policies and structures that define to what extent gentrification occurs in a community. In the next episode, we will elaborate further on the specifics of green gentrification that emerged much later in Hong Kong, digging deeper on the green aspect of green gentrification. We hope to see you there. And once again, thank you for tuning in.